Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Friday. It is Monday the 10th. Oh, man. We are rolling live. We should be on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You guys can go over there and hit the like button, and you may be challenged by the website, which seemed like it was having some issues this morning. Not surprising. It didn't want to stream when we started getting going. So, looks like it's going. I'm watching the stream thing. It says streaming. Those of you in the chat, give me some thumbs up when you guys can you start seeing us over here. We are going to be rolling live with Steve Friend just in a minute here, and we've got an interesting show, I think, lined up for you. We're going to be talking about insanity. Insanity is one of those things that you do over and over again. You keep expecting a different result. Maybe that is us expecting Friendly Fridays to go off without a hitch. That would be silly. It never goes off without a hitch. Whenever we bring Steve on, we always get weird stuff happening. We appreciate all of you guys waiting around on YouTube, over on X, and so on. If you guys are sticking around and you were waiting a second going, what the hell's happening? Yeah, we just had streaming failure. What's funny is that everybody kind of attributes this quote, those who repeat the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity. They always attribute it to Einstein. Apparently, Einstein never had that statement. That's not an Einstein quote. It's just made up. It didn't appear attributed to Einstein until the 1980s, which is probably why I always think of it that way. That's when I was a kid. But it's not real, like so many things in the world. We're always told these repeated myths, and they're not real. They actually are kind of insane if you believe them. We're going to cover down on a number of those today. We're going to talk about the FBI doing wiretaps, specifically 702 FISA, which I covered on our show April 22nd. There's a new article that came out on Wednesday. Didn't cover it yesterday because of our interview, but discussion by Wired Magazine of 702 FISA. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. You guys have probably seen movies like Wind River and realized that the white people are very, very bad. They're out there killing Indians. I got an expert on this field we're going to bring on. Steve Friend is going to talk to us about it a little bit. We're going to go through what is and what is not happening on Indian reservations as being sold by our federal government and also by the Indian tribes, which is kind of interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about whistleblowers, in fact, a lot about it, because we've got the inside baseball from a story that was just dropped by Washington Times and Kerry Pickett regarding our very good friend, Garret O'Boyle, who, congratulations, has made it. He's made it 40 days without eating. That's kind of a little interesting secret, right? The dude hasn't eaten since Easter. kind of a cool spiritual reset. We're going to get into that. All right. So before we get started, let's say thanks to the friends over at Patriot Coolers. Yeah, I'm already ahead of myself. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code Kyle, Kyle. Get yourself a tumbler. Do you need to put stickers on it? No, you can actually get it engraved, or you can get it silk printed or screen printed or whatever they call it. You can get the Suspendables items on there by going to PatriotCoolers.com. Pick out your favorite tumbler, whatever you want to get rocking with, and then you'll go to customize just below the add to cart. You'll go to stock images. Yeah, there's a couple of clicks on here, and you will be able to click the Suspendables, and you'll be able to do exactly what you see on the screen here. I've got the OD green. That's a 32-ounce tumbler. You can get that either laser etched or you can get it printed. Some of them do not have laser etching because they have a handle that gets in the way. Anyhow, interesting choices, beautiful looking products, and unlike Stanley, you're not going to get lead poisoning from getting it. It does have a rifle on it, but you're not going to get lead poisoning. Check out PatriotCoolers.com. Again, PatriotCoolers.com, promo code Kyle, Kyle. And we'll break away and do some more sponsors in a bit. Let's bring on my buddy. He's going to unmute himself here. It is the real Steve Friend. Hey, how you doing, Steve? Good morning.
I had my entire world shattered. I found out that Einstein didn't say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, it goes to show you that, Abraham Lincoln said, don't trust everything you read on the internet. You just never know.
That's such a good meme. Thank you for that. Abraham Lincoln, famously attributed for internet skepticism.
Yes.
And Einstein falsely attributed to defining insanity. What's funny is the first thing that came up was a burned out physician webpage. I think it was called The Burned Out Physician or something like that. And they're like, why on earth does Einstein even think he's an expert on mental health?
Of course, they take umbrage. Like, hey, man, stay in your lane, there.
Einstein. Why don't you just stick with the Rosen Bridge and figure out what's going on with the space-time continuum? Why don't you stay out of our mental health problems here, bro?
Look, we're all about the feels here. You're all about the facts. Let's be really disciplined and make sure that we are concentrating it down on what we really know.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about something that you really know. Are you prepared for this? Take a deep breath. All right, here we go.
I'm armed and ready to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the federal government has told you, this is through the Department of the Interior, our first Indian-born Department of Interior secretary has been pushing this problem that supposedly exists, and I say supposedly because Steve's going to probably debunk that, supposedly exists on our Indian reservations. This is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, MMIW. You know it's serious because they have their own acronym. Let me read directly from a website, which is NIWRC.org. This is a National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. So this is for Indian ladies. And this is what they say. You're seeing this on the screen. Current federal Indian law. Yes, the word Indian is actually built into the laws. Is often referred to as a maze of injustice. Ongoing federal intrusions into the sovereign authority of Indian nations to protect their people and create safe communities has resulted in perpetrators facing little, if any, consequences for their crime. Okay. The high rates of violence and murder of Native women and the lack of accountability for such crimes are clearly tied to this federal intrusion. It's the government's fault, guys. The erosion of tribal authority and the federal government's failure to fulfill its trust responsibility to safeguard the lives of Native women. This crisis continues with the limited prosecutions of perpetrators and the high rate of federal case declinations by U.S. attorneys in crimes of domestic violence, sexual assault, sex trafficking, and murder in Indian country. Okay, so the things that we're going to talk about here, Steve, very specifically is going to be the declination rates and maybe who are the people responsible for all these dangerous violent crimes, killing off murdered and missing Indigenous women. Can you tell me your experience with this MMIW situation?
I can. To address the violent crime, like everything else in the country, it is very intra-racial. So the perpetrators of violence against Native American women tend to be other Native Americans. They might be women, they might be men. And for the purposes of this show, yes, there are two genders. So it's Indians who are killing Indians, just like white people tend to kill white people, black people tend to kill black people. I do think it's interesting, though, that we're going to focus down on the women who are murdered, whereas every homicide that I worked was a man who was killed. But I guess they're not too important. But as far as the missing component to this, you referenced Wind River. And side note, that's an actual resident agency of the FBI. There's 4 people that work there. It's not an abandoned area. They didn't just send the noob agent from Las Vegas to fly in there to address it, get in a shootout in a trailer after being pepper sprayed and walk away. I mean,
Right,
unless,
so-
apparently that only works on Wind River and in the United States Capitol. You can just shoot a guy and walk away.
Hold on a second on this though, because that movie got a lot of attention. And the storyline, if you're not familiar with Wind River, which I will reveal to you right now, is essentially that some oil workers were, one of them was a good guy, and he had a girlfriend who was a beautiful Native woman. And the other guys decided that they were going to kill that guy and rape his girlfriend, and then she runs off and dies. And then they investigate it, and the investigator, as you stated, is a noob female with no experience who steps off from Las Vegas, doesn't even have a parka. But in reality, just like many of the major Indian reservations in this country, there is an actual agent assigned, multiple agents assigned, sometimes entire offices assigned. That's all they do. All they do is Indian crimes, and they handle specific reservations. My buddy was out in Shelby, Montana doing that. I was the guy that was assigned to the Mescalero Apache when I was being removed. Like, there are agents who go through specialized training, and all they do is handle Indian reservation crimes. And Wind River is actually one of them that has a specific office. It's like one of the bigger ones.
Correct. And the actual jurisdiction that they do spell out in that movie is accurate. That's why the FBI has to come in and sort of like fill this gap, this void that exists, because there's all these weird jurisdictional issues. So if a crime happens on the reservation, the tribe can charge it, but they can only charge it really as sort of a misdemeanor, even if it's like a murder or rape. If the person who commits the crime is a Native American, they can charge them. If they're not a Native American, then they can't. So theoretically, like in that movie, the oil workers were white guys, right? If they could commit a rape or a murder, and the tribal police by law can't charge them with the crime. And if it happens on the reservation, even though the reservation's in a county, the county prosecutors a lot of times say, hey, it's on the res, I'm not going to mess with it. So therefore, you could have these guys going out there and actually committing crime. So the feds come in, fill that gap, stand in the gap there, and can bring down the hammer on people. So there's a legitimate reason to have it. But to what we're talking about here with the missing women, this is completely contrived because they do what they do with everything statistically in the federal government, particularly in the FBI. I can tell you that I would be probed and prodded to go and check in on these missing women. I would go out to the reservation and liaise with the tribal police, which, they're my buddies. I'd talk to them every day. And I would say, hey, what's up with these two women? I have them as missing. And they would say, oh, no, they live in town, live in Sioux City. They moved off the reservation. They're working. You want to see their Facebook page? Yeah, here they are. So I've located the women, but I was told they're still missing because they don't live on the reservation anymore. So we're going to just keep them on the list. Yeah,
so I did a kind of a classic drive out to do a knock and talk looking for some lady who was missing, and bang on the door of this whatever trailer type thing that's in the middle of this big property. And there's like maybe 30 kids listening to like EDM, and they answer the door like complete retards. Like, there's no other way to explain what these people are. Like, people sticking their head out the window. Hey, I think the cops are here. Hey, are they the cops? Hey, man, are you the cops? I'm like, no, I'm one guy. I'm not the cops. I am just one FBI agent, but I'm looking for this lady. Yeah, because she doesn't live here. I would always start, that was my favorite, by the way. The best Indian thing that I saw when I was out in Montana was starting with the word because. I don't know any other place where that happens. I think sometimes your children might do that when they're still like learning how to speak, but you'd knock on the door and you'd be like, hey, I'm looking for this lady. Yeah, because she doesn't live here anymore. And you're like,
it's a great effect. Yeah.
It's so
like
weird.
My 6-year-old saying, hey, guess what?
Right.
Guess what?
Yeah, my daughter loves the guess what game. It's like, just tell us whatever you're going to say, sweetheart. We don't have this kind of time. We have a toddler that's vomiting on us, or an infant. But yeah, so they would go, because she doesn't live in here anymore. She's in Seattle. Everything's semi-questionable, almost stoner talk, but it's unique to the kind of areas you go to. And so this guy gives this thing. It's almost Cheech and Chong-like. And then they're like, we could reach her on the Facebook. It's like, could you? Okay, cool. Would you tell her that I'm looking for her? Because I just want to validate. And they showed me the Facebook page, as you just said. This is universal, it seems, across all of at least the Western res that I've ever heard of. There are these women sort of missing. Sometimes they would be missing and they would be murdered, but they were like known meth addicts that went off in the middle of a blizzard by themselves, and then they climbed into a river and swept downstream, and no one ever found the body. So there'd be that, and you're like, I guess they're missing. But they were known for what we would call in the medical world, we call it misadventures. Death by misadventure. That's like sort of like when you off yourself by doing meth and walking into a blizzard, or drinking yourself into, jumping off a boat.
and there's another aspect to where it's almost like the game of telephone. These rumors would come out.
Oh, yeah.
So if a woman died very clearly of natural causes, it'd be like her liver was the size of a spare tire because she drank herself to death by age 38. Speaking from experience, I've seen it. And falls down drunk and passes out and dies in the elements because it's freezing to death, because I've seen it. Then they say, well, if you don't do a full investigation of this, then she was murdered. And then the rumors start to circulate. They start doing the candlelight vigils year after year. They contact the media, and the media wants to perpetuate the same narrative of the evil white man, the evil FBI is not doing their job out there. So they start saying, oh, it's very mysterious. This woman died. She was definitely murdered, and they didn't investigate. So we would go bend over backwards. We do autopsies and go to the mom and say, look, she died of natural causes. That's what happened here, spending taxpayer dollars by the thousands and thousands. And then the mom would say, I reject that premise. This is a cover up. This is a cover up. And it would be all for naught.
Do you want to cover why so many United States attorneys' offices, the AUSAs that are assigned to reservations, do declinations for prosecution in a lot of these cases?
Well, they have a limited bandwidth. They essentially become like the county prosecutors that you see in all across the country. Like, they just have an overwhelming volume of cases if they take everything from the federal level, because the violations on an Indian reservation are just violent crime. It could just be like an assault happened. Two guys get drunk. One guy hits the other guy with a bottle. It's serious bodily injury. That's an assault. They can be charged federally for it. And it gets to the point, if they take everything, then they get bogged down. They can't possibly handle it all. And there's only a few of them. I only dealt with maybe 4 or 5 prosecutors, and they had other cases outside of just the reservation, but they were sort of specializing in that area. And I've gone in and said, like, hey, I have a stabbing. I had this guy, he stabbed the other one in the eyeball with a grilling fork. And they were fighting over who got to sleep in the van that night. And he confessed to it, and they said, yeah, we're going to have to decline on this one.
Right.
How stabbed was he? I was like, the eyeball. I'm like, yeah, he's got 2 of them, right? No, I'm going to decline.
How stabbed was he is a question that I've also heard. It was my first exposure to Indian country. So I flew out to Montana. I landed in Great Falls, and I'm driving to go. I'm doing a temporary duty out there for my first 30 days on the Blackfoot Reservation, which is where I had some very interesting adventures and saw some of the weirdest things. They also have amazing names. They have the best real, what you expect Indian names in the country. And I am very, very thankful that the Blackfoot Reservation exists. Like names like Heavy Runner and Many Guns and Has No Horses are like last names, you know, and they're brilliant. They're amazing. But we get out there, and my buddy's picking me up from the airport, and he's on duty, so he picks me up. We drive up, and we're heading up. It's an hour and a half up to get to the office, which is still an hour and a half away from the res. Pretty classic story. Everybody's kind of like all over the place in this big rural area. And as we're driving up the highway, he gets a call. It's a police sergeant from the tribal PD. You know, got this guy. He's been stabbed. First question, how stabbed is he? And the answer is pocket knife, you know, multiple penetrations, you know, no serious loss of blood, stitches, no hospitalization required. It's like, probably going to decline. I'll run it by the prosecutors. They don't have the bandwidth for it. And then the second thing is, and I think this is something we should also highlight, the number of these incidences where the victim is so inebriated they are unreliable, and or there is absolutely no way to determine, like, both of the victim and the perpetrator are both intoxicated to the point of what would kill you and me, most likely.
It was standard questioning for every interview that I ever did, every interrogation that I ever did, question about the alcohol abuse, because it's so rampant. I mean, it's like a source of hydration. And the way you have to sort of, I at least had to soft pedal it. I wouldn't be like, hey man, how many drinks did you have? I'd be, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how drunk were you? Oh, I was like a 6 or a 7. Okay, how many drinks does it normally take you to get to a 6 or a 7 on that scale? And they'd be like, oh, 14, 15 beers. I mean, I rolled up to the police department one day and saw, you know, he wasn't even handcuffed. I mean, they were just walking him in because he was DUI, and they walked him into the jail. And the cop was laughing. He comes up to me and he goes, 0.48. Guy was walking in to the jail under his own power.
So you can't make this kind of stuff up. And as a medic, like, you know that this is such a high level of alcoholism that when people are functional at that level. I actually dealt with a lady who was coming down. She'd been in a facility, a detox facility, for somewhere between 12 and 18 hours. And we were going to transport her for some additional follow-up. And it was necessary, right? So we transport her, and her blood alcohol level was like 0.31, I want to say, after 18 hours of detox.
She was more drunk than my guy.
And you're like, oh, how much did you drink? And she was like, I drank a handle of vodka. And I'm like, how often do you do that? And she was like, that's my daily. They're going through a bottle of cheap vodka for somewhere between $5 and $10. And this is going back a number of years now. But like that kind of alcoholism is something most people can't fathom, to the point where when I was driving onto the res, which was in a town called Browning, Montana. It's not really a town. It's actually a postal designation. And then the postal designation became a town when they had a flood in the 1960s and FEMA set up like a bunch of trailers and then people just didn't leave them. And so they're still living there now in 2024. So that's Browning, Montana. There's guys on the way out of town and they're probably like 10 to 15 minutes out of town on the walk. There is a 1 hour plus, probably closer to like an hour and 20-minute drive behind us at 80 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, like Montana highway speeds. These dudes are walking. It is freezing temperatures with a wind chill that is below zero. They're in jeans, they're in a hoodie, they have nothing but each one big brown paper bag, which we can assume is some sort of alcohol. And they are walking to go to a party that happens, and there is nothing until you get to this town, which is upwards of 80 miles in the other direction. It's like close to 100 miles. And they'll get there like whenever they get there. That's a level of dedication. That's a hard type of human being. So when you're out there trying to police it, and the federal crimes are, how stabbed were he? Oh, well, he lost an eye over it. We're talking about people that live at a level that most people can't even fathom in this country. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and it's a complete misconception. I mean, like when my dad came to visit, he was like, "Hey, let's go see the reservation." I was like, "Okay." We drive out there, and he's like, "Where are the teepees?" I mean, it's essentially government housing, either a FEMA trailer or there could be actual hard structure, and there's no oversight of the money. The rampant corruption that happens with the federal funds, even with the tribal funds, the funds that come from the casinos. It's a culture of addiction, be it alcohol, it could be pornography, could be sex addiction, could be methamphetamines or any other hard drugs or gambling. And then you get out there and look, there was a day, it was Mother's Day. They called it Mother's Day. It was once a month. Mother's Day was when the checks rolled in. And the teachers at the schools knew that they would have almost no attendance the day after Mother's Day because the parents were so blasted that they did not get their kids to school that day.
Mm-hmm. It's just something that most people...
It's a crab trap. And the fact that if, in my case, the two women that actually escaped it, and from what I saw on their Facebook, at least, had jobs, lived in a small, 80,000 person city that I lived in myself, had houses, had escaped this abject poverty and pathetic existence. And they were on the list as victims that needed to be cataloged so that the government could continue this boondoggle and keep throwing funds at it and keep calling you and me bad because they decided to do something with their lives, but we didn't keep them on that trap. Like it's just so counterintuitive.
Why do they lie about the numbers, you think?
Funding. It's always about funding. I mean, they can keep this program going and they can say, look at this list. It's continued to grow and expand. We need to start a new initiative, because the way you promote in a structure like the FBI or the federal government is you invent a solution and then you look for a problem to apply it to. And so there's a lot of fertile territory there that you can come up with any sort of welfare system or law enforcement apparatus that you could put a nice little acronym on like they did there. And then you're a blue flamer, man. You're getting promoted to the next job and you never have to see it implemented because you're already gone.
Would you say that Indian country crimes are a high priority for the FBI?
They are the lowest priority in the FBI. Which is actually kind of funny because they make all their numbers off of Indian country for a lot of these divisions. So in my office in Omaha division, there's roughly 75 special agents in the state of Iowa and Nebraska. And it was me and one other guy were pretty productive on the Indian reservations. That's all we did. And we came in for the end of the year and we're gold on all of our stats, all of our quotas. We hit them all. And they pulled up the arrest total for the division. And we were responsible for 30% of it. 2 guys. Yes.
So this is what I wanted to get at, because it's the lowest priority. It's a thing that they're making into, they're making a mountain out of this molehill and sometimes completely fabricated information. They're banking on it for stats, but they don't really fund it or they don't staff it for the manpower. And it is one of the actual authorities that the federal government can legally and justifiably get involved in. Would that be all accurate statements?
All accurate, and it attracts the person who doesn't just get assigned to it. If you raise your hand to go to it, it's the person that wants to do the job of an investigator independently, actually make an impact. You want to talk about these vulnerable people or these communities that are dire straits and in need of assistance. You have the opportunity to put some really evil people away for a very long time. And that's what I signed up to do. I was talking to my son about it the other day because he was like, well, when you were a detective and, what was the worst stuff you saw? And he's 10. I don't want to get too graphic with him, but I explained to him how I had a woman who facilitated, because she worked for the Child Family Services. She facilitated a retarded boy to be put in her care so she could get bonus money because he was retarded versus a normal foster kid. And then she locked him in a closet in her basement. Okay, she actually latched him, and he slept on a concrete floor and defecated all over himself. And his only friends, as he told us, were the rats that crawled over his legs. I got to put her in prison. Like, that was super rewarding to me. But most people in the FBI, like, hey, that sounds gross. Don't want to think about it. Steve, as long as you handle it, you can cut every corner that you want. Hey, and by the way, you're gold in all your numbers because you're getting the right number of arrests. We're good here.
Yep. The worst things that I saw as an agent were also on a res. I didn't have to do it for nearly very long, but like even my last day of real duty before I was unceremoniously removed for not putting COVID swabs up my nose, the last day was being called out at 0300 and said, hey, you're working on the res. You understand how violent crime works. Can you go and help an investigation with our brand new agent who just came out of Quantico, and we have a dead body at a federal prison. It was the section of the federal prison. And interestingly, I was removed for COVID stuff, and you can't make it up, Steve. The place I went was the COVID isolation ward, where I spent 12 hours doing interviews with every guard and every inmate who was in the area, who was being isolated. And we had a dude, who was this monstrous illegal alien, had come in. Monstrous. He was like 300 pounds, huge head, like the size of 2 bowling balls, just a monster head. And he had a
motorcycle helmet.
He had a bullet wound in the back of his head that apparently had healed a long time ago. He actually had a slug in the back of his head that had just been there. And they were like, and he was talking about, and he somehow, they ruled that his death was unrelated to the other inmate that was in with him, who was tiny. It's a tiny little guy. Apparently the guy got up, lost his mind, and then fell over dead. Probably a COVID thing. You never know. At that point in time, it was definitely a possibility. Anyway, we were, sent it off to the medical examiner's office. That was my last thing. I can tell you that the number of FBI agents, of the 14,000 agents that have seen a dead body because of work, what do you think it is? Triple digits, tops?
So there's about 150 agents to work in Indian reservations, so about 150.
Yeah, that's it. Like, nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is going out on a dead body.
Even if it's a violent crime, we work safe streets. There was a gang shootout. No, the locals handled it, and then you swept in the next day and grabbed the report.
Even there's a fair number of guys that work on these violent crime task force or whatever that are actually rolling with local PD and actually doing, kinetic hits, but it's not dead body hits. Unless they accidentally shoot somebody and they have to kill somebody. We're going to talk about a shooting a little bit later on. I want to break over to say thanks to my buddies at Catholic Vote who are supporting us. Guys, the new Between the Lines, which is our podcast with Catholic Vote, has dropped. You can find the link in the description. If you're watching on Rumble, you'll see the link for Rumble. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the link for YouTube. If you're watching on X, follow them on the X platform, which is at Catholic Vote. Same story for those of you watching on Facebook. If you guys catch it, Between the Lines, it's our new little thing. It's a little decision for those of us who are not the most thrilled about our options when it comes to the presidential election. I'm not trying to elect someone to be a role model for my children, and kind of a discussion about that. You guys can follow Catholic Vote at catholicvote.org. You can get The Loop, which is where you're going to get great news. And if you don't get enough news out of today's podcast, you can always go there and get a quick primer on what's happening in the world. And I think you guys will be you'll be well informed. You will not be the person who doesn't know what's happening at your water cooler in your office. I got a video that I wanted to play with you. This is the epic rant. I rarely do this kind of stuff, folks, but this is a long form, 3-minute or so rant that I think encompasses a lot of the frustration we have. We're going to talk about some really dangerous programs. We talked about the Indian country specifically because it's contrast to the high priority. The high priority is national security. Would you agree with that?
No question. That is the prime directive now.
Okay. We've got a story that came out of Wired Magazine, which if you watch our podcast, you would have already known about going back to April 22. We're going to have a little bit more insight on it. The problem is it's in stark contrast to what we're hearing Donald Trump say on his own platform on True Social. This doesn't mean that Donald Trump is not the better option between Biden, RFK, both of whom are apparently like pro-baby murder up to the point of birth. But we've got to push on the man that we want to represent us. If he's going to be not my kid's, role model, I still want him to not fund this horrible agency that got rid of you and me. Our buddy Garret O'Boyle has done some awful things in this country and is 100% committed to violating civil liberties. This is Jesse Kelly, who's a friend of ours. He's had us on his show. I appreciate the way he speaks. I've never seen him this pissed. I think this encapsulates a lot of the Suspendables feelings right now. You think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
did you send me this originally? I think you originally sent me this video.
Yes, I did. I was alerted to it by his producer. He was like, hey, just so you know, Jesse was really fired up. You should watch this. And I watched the clip. And then I watched the whole thing. The expanded one, he went straight for 10 minutes in the same vein. It was really, really angry. And then his radio show, he did it for a full hour.
Yeah, because this is a real problem, folks. This is a real problem when the guy who is who's asking for your vote doesn't seem to get it, and we're all trying to push on it. I can't tell you the number of Trump investigators that are like, there's people in his camp that reach out and talk to us. We're friendly with people that are in that orbit. How are they not getting this through? That this agency is antithetical to American liberty. Jesse Kelly obviously gets it right on the head. Like I said, 3-minute long form. Here you go.
Let's address something that Trump put up today. This is the second time he's said something like this when it comes to the FBI. Trump went on social media and he said this, I'll just read him. This is verbatim, direct quote. The new FBI building should be built in Washington, D.C., not Maryland, and be the centerpiece of my plan to totally renovate and rebuild our capital city into the most beautiful and safest city anywhere in the world. The FBI must be in walking distance to the DOJ building, in that the DOJ and FBI have to work closely together. A 2-minute walk to a meeting is far better than a traffic-laden 2-hour drive to Greenbelt, Maryland. Likewise, having the FBI in D.C. is important for ending the violent crime, which I will do quickly. This is unacceptable. I don't give a crap how offended you are right now. I don't give a crap if this upsets you. This is ridiculous. It's unacceptable, and it's naive to the point of being childlike. This is not draining the swamp. This is ensuring more mud, more muck, more filth comes into the swamp. And I don't know what kind of crap is going on over there in the Trump campaign, but you can count me out if this is what I get. If I get more abortion, more vaccine salesmen, new FBI building, then tell me why I should give a crap who wins this November. What do I get? Do I get savings, money savings, spending savings? Not a dime. He spent more than Obama. What do I get? Nothing is what I get. I'm so sick of this crap, and I'm sick of people who won't wake up and start pushing back against him on this stuff from his own team. His own team better get Trump in line, and Trump himself better get himself in line. I cannot take this naivete of him trying to be liked by the mortal enemies that are destroying the United States of America. We will not have a United States of America 50 years from now unless the FBI is completely abolished or in the very least brought to heel. We cannot afford 4 years of Trump sucking up to him. How about a new building, guys? Sucking up to the media, trying to be liked by everybody who hates you and hates me and hates the country. And I won't abide by it. And if you want that, if you want Trump pom-poms every single night, you have tuned into the wrong freaking show. Change the channel. I am...
Okay, that's good. Listen, he's spot on, folks. The reason that you push on this is because Trump is a populist. We've talked about this a lot. Trump is a populist, and he is inspired by popular opinions of people in the MAGA movement. If you tell him this is garbage, he will move on it. He has to understand this is flippin' dangerous. You don't get to move, like you don't make the argument. He doesn't even seem to understand what the FBI is. Can you give people, you just mentioned Indian crimes are the only place where violent crime is addressed by the FBI. Would that be pretty close to accurate?
Pretty close. I mean, you think you can make a case about like Hobbs Act stuff, which is basically like dopers killing dopers and gangs and that sort of thing. They don't even want to do that, though.
They don't even want to do that work. Like bank robberies used to be what the FBI's bread and butter was, and now they think it's beneath them.
The locals a lot of times just won't even bother with the FBI because they can't get there. They're not responsive. You read these press releases about the FBI claiming that they stopped some serial bank robber, and the guy was caught within a few hours because the local municipal police department or the sheriff's office like tracked him down with a K-9 unit and got him into custody. And then the FBI was like, well, now that the danger is all over, we can swoop in and take it.
The reason that we do the show one of the major reasons is dispel myths and try to give people factual information. Putting the FBI in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, it's there right now. There's a Washington field office. I used to report to it. It's in Judicial Square. There are homeless people surrounding the building. The one corner of the FBI's building has homeless people sleeping on it permanently. They're always there. There's 40 black males that get up and wander around in the streets, depending on the time of day, wearing no shirts, washing their clothes in bird baths and on the ground. They are disgusting people that have just they have no quality of life in our nation's capital. And to the idea that leaving the Hoover building, which by the way has been there since whenever they built it, 1970s, the FBI has been based in DC since its inception. It doesn't have any role in making DC not a crime-riven, garbage pile. So the idea that we need to keep it in DC, we can't put it in Maryland. Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, all bullshit. Get rid of it. It needs to, if you're going to have an FBI headquarters, it should be in Huntsville, Alabama.
It's a sunk cost at this point. It's like a $2.5 billion facility that was built there. And I don't know the timing of when you came in. I can't remember. It's all kind of, the timeline gets screwed up. But it was represented to us when we heard about Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yep.
That's going to be the new headquarters. They're putting some assets down there now. There's going to be some training stuff. But the long-term plan is we're going to relocate headquarters. And I remember thinking that'll actually be the rare quasi-good idea from a headquarters standpoint, because it'll really separate the wheat from the chaff. Do you want to be in a position of leadership in the FBI and call the shots, or do you want to live in Washington, D.C.? Do you want to just have that lifestyle? And it sounded too yucky to so many of these people to move to Alabama. And I guess it's probably a win for Alabama not to have them move in.
Yep.
But Huntsville is a nice area. It's basically like Nashville was 15 years ago. It's on the up, and you got NASA there. Now you're going to have an FBI headquarters there. It was not going to be hard living.
No, there's a big Army base there.
Still can't live. Oh no, we can't live the DMV, as you call it, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Yeah,
because they want to be near the power. And to this myth of the violent crime, the FBI doesn't investigate violent crime.
No.
If they do, if that was really what they were doing, they're doing a really crummy job in over a half of a century in Washington, D.C., which is one of the most violent cities in the country, which is why they had to change the name of their basketball team from the Bullets, because that was going to fix it, I guess. But
let me educate people here just a little bit about the DMV, as we talked about, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and why it is a danger, and why having an FBI office there, which I'm, by the way, at the end of that rant, which I actually did cut off, it wasn't 3 minutes. I realized that he says the same thing for a little while, just pissed. At the end of it, he says, you don't have to like it, but I'm right. Let me explain to people why I'm right, because I am. DC is home to what they call the Golden Triangle in the FBI. The Golden Triangle is the Baltimore field office, the Washington field office, and the Hoover building FBI headquarters, right? Anybody that has aspirations of being one of the top leaders in the FBI, including the worst people that exist in federal service, in my opinion, those people have every shot of buying a townhouse, a row house, a brownstone, call it whatever you want, in either in Washington, D.C., in the surrounding areas like Rockville County, which is very nice, even though it's communist because it's in Maryland, or they do it in Alexandria, which is in Virginia, if they own guns or something. They can own any of these properties. They buy it when they get stationed at Washington Field for the first time. Then they have the ability to never leave that little bubble, that Golden Triangle. They can go to headquarters. They can become a program manager. That's a supervisory special agent, a GS-14.
Entry level into management as program manager, where you can have oversight of something you've never actually worked.
Right. So you'll have somebody that basically was like, oh, I handled some sort of extraterritorial counterterrorism issues, and now I'm in charge of Steve Friend, who's working on an Indian reservation, and I don't know anything about it, but I know that I got to get my metrics, and as long as Steve is getting 30% of the division's arrests, I'm good to go. That person will then get promoted to become a real supervisor of a real squad that they really don't know anything about, like my first boss at the Washington field office, where they have dozens and dozens and dozens of squads. I would say that your field office that you worked at probably had, maybe 15 squads total?
Oh, not even. No, nowhere close to it. We only had 75 agents.
Okay, 75 agents divided by, let's say, 6. So maybe there were 10 squads. That's probably about right. You probably had 10 squads at your field office. Washington Field has more than 10 squads just working counterterrorism, more than 10 squads working counterintelligence. They have a cyber division. They've got all the divisions. So you've got dozens of positions for GS-14s to get what they call desk experience, which is a field supervisor. Then they get a chance to go back and they want to become a 15. So they're going to go to headquarters and they're going to be called a unit chief or a section chief. And I'm nebulous on what those jobs look like as far as like pay grade, but that gives them an opportunity to come back to the field and be an ASAC. Usually there's one assistant special agent in charge in a field. Maybe there's two. In Washington Field, there's like 15. There's 15 frontline supervisory, it's like second tier supervisors that are working out of Washington Field. You got another couple of them up in Baltimore. You've got 5 special agents in charge of the field office working out of Washington Field. You've got 1 assistant director. That's an SES2 position. So they've got all of these things. They never have to leave. They move into DC 6 years into their experience, in their total FBI experience. My supervisor, by the way, bought her brownstone. She had been in the FBI for 3.5 years.
She knew where her career trajectory
She
was
spent
going to go.
9 years at headquarters.
And even just stick a pin in the Washington field office, which is the operations for Washington, D.C. They're supposed to be doing the criminal investigations, the counterterrorism, national security for Washington, D.C.
Right, it's
That's
already
their
there.
area of responsibility. Just the headquarters. 1 in 5 FBI employees works at FBI headquarters. So combine that with Washington field office and Baltimore and Richmond, which we left off, and maybe even to Philadelphia. I mean,
not to mention
40% of the entire workforce.
We're talking a huge percentage. You had like, I want to say there was like almost 1,000 agents working out of Washington Field. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of employees working there, and the FBI's only got 36,000 total employees. So to say these kind of things drives us absolutely mad, because people have no concept what this organization is, what they're about, and that is exactly why this Wired magazine piece should make sense to people, why it should bother people, and why people like Donald Trump need to listen to folks that know what we're talking about. We're saying it because it's important, not because like we just want to bag on people. I would love for him to get this correct. Nothing would make me happier. It would make all of the things that our families have sacrificed actually mean something. Let me read this to you guys. Okay, this just came out again. This is Wired magazine from Wednesday. Top FBI official urges agents to use warrantless wiretaps on U.S. soil. An internal email from FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate, obtained by Wired, from me, but they don't quote me or credit me, tells employees to search U.S. persons in a controversial spy program database that investigators have repeatedly misused. This would be referred to as the top priority of the FBI. Counterintelligence, counterterrorism, using these types of tools. There's some really wild stuff in here. And this is what he says. Abate says, to continue to demonstrate, ready? This is exactly what you were just talking about a second ago, Steve. You were talking about how the FBI, they come up with a tool and then they decide that they have to use it. To continue to demonstrate why tools like this are essential to our mission, we need to use them, his emphasis added, while also holding ourselves accountable to doing so properly and in compliance with legal requirements. We need this tool so that we can use it. It's like pass the bill so we can find out what's in it, the Pelosi regime. They didn't actually need 702. It didn't exist in the way that they have it before Donald Trump came into office. Obama put this poison pill into action so that the intelligence community would be armed. And our GOP just funded it.
There's so many elements here. I mean, you talk about like Executive Order 12333, which George Hill knows way more about than me, but basically gives federal law enforcement, i.e. the FBI, unfettered access to signals intelligence that is glommed up by the Roomba that is the NSA. They don't need a warrant for it or any sort of restrictions. They can just go in and shop around for whatever they want. And then you have, yes, we've reauthorized Section 702, which is supposed to be a counterintelligence tool. You're supposed to be monitoring the electronic communications for a foreign official when they are outside the United States. But if they talk to an American and you're a law enforcement agency, that's interesting to you. So you use it to reverse target them. And then you pair that with Appendix G of the Domestic Investigations Operations Guide, which says that if you have contact with anyone from outside the United States, the FBI can open a counterintelligence case up on you. So now they have all the tools they need to go after whoever they want, because, I mean, just look at your spam box of your email, your Gmail account. How much do you think came from outside the United States? I imagine there's 1 or 2 in there, and now we have an open investigation on you, counterintelligence, where we don't have to respect due process. We don't have to respect your Fourth Amendment rights. We don't have to even have the anticipation it's ever going to trial. So we can just circumvent all the rules and just keep digging and digging and digging. And if, a decade decade and a half goes by and it's just been dry, you know what we can do? We'll just go to you and ask you questions and hope you'll say something that we can say you lied, which we didn't record the interview, by the way. Just our contemporaneous recollections will document that we think that you lacked candor with us. And wouldn't you know it, let's send in the Bearcat at 6 a.m.
People don't understand that this data warehouse system, which is what it's called, DWS, it didn't used to include all this stuff. I had to clarify with George because I've never used DWS. I've never used 702 FISA illegally. I never did it. It never occurred to me that that would make sense because I understood that that wasn't what the purpose of the tool was. I didn't minimize things properly because I couldn't figure out how to do that, which is a big problem in and of itself. Minimization is sort of like the redaction of Americans' names so that they're not, going to be cited in a case that has nothing to do with them. It has to do with a foreign target. But we heard John Cornyn over and over and over again talking about how when we say foreign intelligence, we do mean foreign people, right? And they serve it up to DOJ, and then DOJ is like, yes, we mean foreign intelligence. No, MFer, they mean domestic people. This is what happened as Obama was leaving. He updated 12333, the executive order that authorizes the collections that the National Security Agency, NSA, does. And NSA basically they suddenly now, and in end of 2016, also covered by Wired Magazine, also covered by the ACLU at the time, they turned over this tool for deep state capabilities. They turned over something that allowed all of the NSA's collection data to sit in a warehouse that was queryable. Now, just like anybody who's ever gone to WikiLeaks, if you've ever gone to any of these non-curated databases, you have to be very specific in your search terms. But if I have what we call selectors, let's say I have Steve Friend's email address, which they definitely have your email address. Let's say they have Kyle Seraphin's email address. You can query this email address and get every interaction that has come up there. But the new guidance that is given by the letter that is being referenced by this Wired Magazine piece, which we cited on April 22nd, and there is a great little clip that I've pulled out, and I put it on my Twitter page, and I put it on True Social. You guys can disseminate it. They say you can no longer do evidence, quote, evidence of a crime only searches. That's no longer allowed. Why would you no longer allow something unless you used to do that thing in violation of federal law? Would that make sense to you? The phrasing there, does that line up? Is my logic correct?
Well, it's tantamount to an admission of guilt. And even in that Wired piece there where they say, well, the FBI is 98% compliant with the rules and regulations that it sets for itself and monitors itself on. So we just have to take their word for it, bro. Trust me, bro. But even just take that on its face, 98% in compliance. Well, how many searches go on? You were doing them all the time. So isn't that admitting that 2%, 1 in 50 of the searches are illegal and improper? If you're doing extrapolate that over, I don't know, 1 million searches.
Well, they've told us they've tightened down on the number of people that can do it. You know who can do it? SOSs, non-agents. Intel analysts, non-agents, people that don't have a training in constitutional law are able to do this because they believe in intelligence. And the fundamental thing that we keep trying to hammer home with this podcast and all the interviews you and I do is that we're talking about an intelligence agency that also has law enforcement capabilities. That intelligence agency is doing something that people don't understand. They don't believe in due process because there's no requirement for due process for information-only purposes.
And we want to extrapolate this out. I mean, I know people are in your chat really fired up about Jesse Kelly going and attacking Donald Trump.
Yeah,
right?
He's wrong.
Let's just put it specifically to your boy, all right? The now president of the United States has a derelict, ne'er-do-well son who committed lots of crimes as a bagman for the Biden family. We all know it. And then documented multiple felonies on a laptop, which he abandoned at a laptop repair shop. And then the owner of the laptop repair shop tried to turn it in, and did turn it into the FBI, and the FBI buried it. And then then this laptop repair shop guy was like, hey, what the heck's going on here? I'm going to bring it to the news media. And because the intelligence apparatus of the FBI was doing an illegal FISA wiretap, they knew that was going to happen, and they deployed the resources to social media companies and said, ignore the Hunter laptop story. Ignore it. Censor it. This is fake news. This is Russian disinformation. And they did. That's your boy who had that happen to him in 2020 and
He's now talking said, about let's a new
build
headquarters.
them a brand new building.
You can't hold those two ideas in your head and be a rational person. And I'm so sick of people saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Dude, this is not an enemy that you can keep closer. This is like letting an enormous tiger, and you don't have a tranquilizer dart in your house, and you're like, well, I better hide in the bathroom with the damn thing. That way it'll maul me and not maul anybody else. It's going to destroy everybody, and then it's going to get out of the bathroom and kill everybody else. This is an existential threat to American liberty.
And I'll add this about Jesse Kelly's monologue. It's about 10 minutes long. Think of it like a giant like sub sandwich there. We were getting like the really hot sauce of it, the emotional component.
Right.
He laid out item after item after item of the last few years of what the FBI has done over and over and over again. And it's sort of the theme of your show today, the insanity. You watch that happen over and over again, and you have the cognitive dissonance to say, well, it won't happen to me. Well, it'll be better when we're in charge. You were in charge for 4 years, and they did it to you. It is the ring of power.
It was never Trump's FBI, not ever. The guy he got in charge, Chris Wray, you notice the Democrats love defending him. They go out of their way as sycophants when it comes to congressional hearings to praise his service to the country. Why would they do that if they thought he was really, acting as a Republican? There is no chance that guy is acting on behalf of American civil liberties. In fact, on his watch, we saw they de-escalated rigid obedience to the Constitution to the lowest of the core values. I saw it. We know that it happened. It happened while Trump was in office just before the election. It happened somewhere between September 3rd and September 7th of 2020, just before that election cycle hit. Just before November, the FBI decided that rigid obedience to the Constitution was the least important value, and they moved things like diversity above it.
Well, diversity is our strength. That's why we have to have 9 diversity committees that are solely answerable to the director of the FBI. They're outside the chain of command, the entire organizational
structure. Yeah, they go directly outside.
Directly to Wray.
Yeah, they go directly to Wray. They go to the office of the director. I want to play this next piece here, which is the wildest damn thing. And we're talking about insanity, people. If you're in the chat and you're over here and you're still backing this stuff up, if you're still like, oh, the FBI, like Trump's take on FBI is okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. That doesn't mean I'm mad at the guy. I'm just saying this is a stupid take. We all have friends that we disagree with. They think things are great that make no sense. They're like, yeah, it makes total sense to have a Corvette when you have little kids and you want to you just put the car seat in the back. You're a moron. You don't put a car seat in the back of the Corvette and drive your kid around in a sports car. You also don't get an automatic transmission. I had a friend who had a Corvette, a Z06 with an automatic transmission. His dad bought it when I was a kid. I was like, what? No, dude, this is a manual. There are bad choices in the world. We can still be friends with people who make them, but we try to educate them. Like, no, you're supposed to have, some control over the transmission if you want to drive a sports car. You're supposed to not let the thing that screwed you every way from Sunday, per Chuck Schumer, they screwed you out of a presidency that was going to be effective. They were working against you the entire time. They're working against American liberties. By the way, they're working against the political left too. They're just doing it less loudly. But the FBI serves the FBI. It doesn't serve some political master in any meaningful way. It serves the FBI's budget, which is why they lie about things like missing and Indigenous women. They're totally happy to get that money. And then they screw guys like you out there who are trying to do your job. All right. I'm gonna make a reference to our one of our sponsors here, and then I want to bring up this article about Garret O'Boyle. You want to talk about insanity? It happens inside the FBI too. It's a big piece of it. All right, before we do that, yesterday was Jerky Day. My kid came up and dropped this off in my office. I've got these are the monster bags, people. These are the 12 ounces of Matt Hat Jerky. This is the way that I order them. This is the original spicy, or the original spice flavor. I've also got the black truffle. I got a smaller bag of garlic that just showed up. I buy it with my own money because it's worth it. Matt Hat Jerky, Matt with 2 T's, Hat with 1 T, matthatjerky.com/Kyle is how you get there. Use promo code Kyle, saves you 20%. That's a good deal. And then when you find what you like, you can set up a subscription, which will also give you a 20%, knock off right there. So once you come in, you've given us credit for it. We really appreciate it if you go to matthatjerky.com/Kyle. If you're looking for a healthy and a decent snack, I don't want to belabor this any longer. It's my favorite. This is what I fuel my rage on sitting here. Let me blow your minds, folks. Here we go. We talked about Wired. This is freaking insane. If you haven't heard this came out yesterday. It came out in Washington Times. It was written by Carrie Pickett, who's a friend of ours, in so much as she covers our story fairly, and very few people have been willing to take these things on. It's also kind of a small news outlet. This is groundbreaking insanity. FBI agent accuses top brass of retaliation for defending whistleblower. This would fall under the holy shit category. An FBI special agent has notified Congress as of Thursday that a top brass member of the FBI removed him from his job in retaliation for defending a fellow whistleblower. The agent, Also, an attorney who worked as an adjudicator investigating misconduct within the FBI said his superiors turned on him when he recommended ending the suspension of FBI agent Garret O'Boyle. I'm going to put you on the screen for your reactions as I keep going here, Steve. Mr. O'Boyle was at the center of the whistleblower saga since his clearance was revoked in September of 2022, allegedly leaking information about an investigation, a criminal investigation into Project Veritas. The suspension without pay, which he is still on, ladies and gentlemen, he's still on this suspension, was imposed with the after the FBI saw him testify. That's actually false. Kerry missed that one up. He was suspended and then he testified at weaponization with you, Steve. You guys went on there. It financially devastated the family. We've had to go out there and raise money on their behalf. He still doesn't have an income. He's not allowed to work. The crazy thing is this. This is a brand new whistleblower, someone that none of us have met, who was working as an attorney. A third-party guideline walked in, saw the investigation into O'Boyle, looked at the facts that they had in evidence and said, this does not substantiate a suspension. I recommend reinstatement. And that guy was removed for his troubles. I'm going to show you the actual text from the article here. The FBI adjudicator working in the security division, which we call Sec D, reviewed O'Boyle's case and recommended lifting the suspension and reinstating him as an agent. The adjudicator said the FBI lacked specific information to support the suspension of Mr. O'Boyle. According to the new whistleblower disclosure, acting section chief Dina Perkins quickly revoked the adjudicator's finding and then transferred him out of that post, which is kind of a cush gig at headquarters. The disclosure claimed this was not the first time that Perkins has moved several other employees who reported to her for recommending decisions contrary to her interests and bases many of her decisions on favoritism. What do you think?
It. That's well, we've known it for a long time.
Let's hone in on the insanity aspect of the person that did this. Can you articulate that in a way, and maybe I'll follow up with you.
Yes, I mean I think this. You have to give me a little latitude here. All right, we call ourselves system idealists. Okay, and why do we say that? Well, because we believe in the system. We have this Isaiah 6:8 moment. Here I am. I'm available for tasking. Esther 4:14. Born for such a time as this. We believe in a cause that is bigger than ourselves, and we're willing to task ourselves against our own self-interest to further that cause. And as a result of that, when the enemy presented itself, the hill presented itself, and it was in fact our employer, we stood against it. And it was against our self-interest, but I'm not to bring too much GOB and go all Jesus on you. But like, this is not our permanent home. We have to do the right thing, even if it's against our current self-interests. It's kind of insane, but there's a faith component to it. The same system idealism and faith component exists within the system of the FBI, but it's a worldly faith. They believe in the system of the FBI, and if they adhere to it like a Pharisee and do everything, then they know that they will reap the worldly rewards. And it doesn't make sense to them when they look around and see you, me, or somebody else in the cubicle next door get off for not something that was transient. Like, what do you mean they walked him out? Well, there must have been something more than that. I'm just going to plod along and follow the system. I'm a system idealist because I believe in the system. And that's how they can delude themselves into thinking that the alligator's never going to try to eat them as it eats everyone around them first.
This episode is called Insanity for a reason, folks. When you do the same thing over and over again, when you see it repeated over and over again, but your assumption is not for me. That's everybody else's problem. There are human patterns of behavior. The number of women that are beaten by men that claim that the guy loves them and so they make excuses for them. That is a pattern. We've seen it on Indian reservations. We've seen it out in the world. You might have a friend. We feel pity for that woman because what she thinks is everybody else had the same problem, but I won't get trapped in it. And she got trapped in the cycle because it's a cycle, because it's built into our human desire to believe in a system. The system may be marriage or a relationship or the FBI in this case. And what we're talking about are people look around, and Steve just said it very accurately. They see someone walked out for absolute bullshit and they go, there must be something more to it. The only reason that you make excuses is because you think there must be more to it because I believe in this system. If you are excusing the statements of Donald Trump about building a brand new headquarters and it has to be in DC, you are making excuses, despite the fact that the evidence is there should be no new FBI headquarters. Our Republican GOP House failed us by pushing it forward. Same with the Senate that passed it. Everybody's on board to get a new headquarters. Nobody wants to be the person that has the next 9/11 on their watch. That's what they're worried about. If you want to be real honest, the wall of 9/11, the specter of 9/11 is still real enough that they don't want to be responsible for the next 9/11. Right? That's what they're scared of. God forbid we remove the only agency that can help us. The problem is there's already evidence in existence, which we have shared with Congress, that the FBI has nothing to do with stopping a 9/11, and it certainly won't do it today. They don't even do the work that they're making up terrorism because they can't find real terrorism. Because the real terrorism is probably underground. It's probably really effective until when it's ready.
We are putting our trust in government employees. Like at the end of the day, like they're people that, by and large, I mean, they're above average intelligence, but they're not, really high speed, low drag for the most part. But
I have a video for you.
We touched on this, you and I offline, about like the insanity of doing things that have been provably dangerous or wrong just because it must have been different. There must have been some extenuating circumstances. It's probably really dangerous to send a SWAT team at 6 o'clock in the morning to go get this armed subject because all of his guns that we're going to be charging him with are inside this structure. So we should just get him when he's there. We can't possibly think of going outside the box on that, even though we watched the raid a month ago when 3 agents got gunned down standing on a porch. The same type of thing. Well, different. We'll just do the same thing.
It's insanity.
That's insane.
It's repeating things that are illogical, that don't make any bit of sense. I want to hammer home the story, folks, one more time. Garret O'Boyle did not do the thing the FBI accused him of. The investigators, there's been a first whistleblower that came out and said, yeah, we weren't able to substantiate that he did that thing, but we removed him anyway. And the statement was, direct quote, "We're going to fuck him over," from Dina Perkins and a guy named Sean Clark, who now works for BDO. Those people, one of them still works for the Bureau, one of them has retired. Those people had a personal vendetta.
2 of them.
There was a personal vendetta against Garret O'Boyle, and he and I were talking about it yesterday about why, and I have a suspicion why. One of the things that I did, starting before I was removed from the Bureau in November of 21, was I gathered up a bunch of people together that were not going to get the vaccine. You would have been part of it, but we didn't have a contact you. It was word of mouth only. Garret was brought into that group. Garret, as far as I can tell, is the only person that was in that group that I had no reasonable connection to for any other reason. The only reason that he was connected there is because he and I were in that group together. We started communicating on FBI lines. We went through what's called the link chat, which is like a Skype or an instant messenger, and we were out there communicating, and I was helping Garret work up his application for a surveillance group that we were going to go and apply to try to get ourselves out of the nasty mess we were in, keep carrying on with our whistleblower activity that we had already started doing. But we were going to try to extract ourselves from the field office where we'd obviously lost all the credibility with the people we worked with. We tried to go to another unit, and then we would have had visibility to all the counterterrorism cases, by the way, which would have been huge. I had been accepted to go and do the tryout. Garret was also accepted to do the tryout. He was allowed to do it. That was the reason they let him move, because he tried out and was accepted to this team. I was removed from duty 2 days before I was supposed to fly out and do that tryout. Or maybe it was 4 days before. It was the week that I was supposed to go there. I had my badge and my gun taken, which was kind of incredible. Actually, I hadn't booked out the ticket yet, thankfully. I was always kind of a last minute guy on tickets. And because you never really know what's going to come up when you work as a federal agent. Apparently, you could lose your badge and gun. Long and short of it is, somebody already agreed that there was no way that they could prove that Garret did the thing they said. That person was then removed for other reasons. Then you have this adjudicator coming in, a third party with no skin in the game, a lawyer, a system idealist, someone who thinks that things are fair. And we're like, holy crap, they mistreated Garret O'Boyle. I better report that. And had exactly the same thing happen to him that happened to Garret, which is you report wrongdoing, you get destroyed at the FBI. It comes from the myth of federal exceptional service, these like mythical Jason Bourne type attitudes that we think. I had people like all over social media, Steve, that they're like, he's from the FBI, he's a trained liar. Any training that you got that taught you to be a decent interview at the FBI? Any? Because I'm going to show the video, which is hilarious. I showed it earlier. It looks like
no, but before you do that, I mean, I think this is in line with what we had another whistleblower come out about Paula Bate in the aftermath of January 6th. Go and on a nationwide conference call to hundreds of people, say if anyone had a problem with the FBI bringing forward the investigations in the fashion that they were, and contrasting that with their lack of any action in 2020 about the riots that were going around the country, that person needed to look for work elsewhere or to send them directly to Paula Bate, and he would set them straight. This is Dina Perkins. It's the same mindset. If you disagree with the party line, we will remove you entirely from it.
This is why people think, because FBI employees will see this video and they'll be like, dude, look how awesome we look. Folks, hold your gag bags out because this looks like a parody from the 80s. This is a modern, new video, propaganda video from the FBI's training division. I'm going to share it mostly to just entertain me and Steve, but you guys will get a kick out of it. We'll probably cut it from the audio show because there's no words to it. There's just visuals. If you guys want to jump in, it's about the hour mark in the show. You can see it. Here we go. Blammo. I like that they showed a guy like with 2x4s. Like, what was that?
I was really distracted by the notion that you apparently, if you're in the FBI and you handle a firearm, you have to be bent over at roughly a 45-degree angle.
It looks
from
like
the
this,
waist.
folks. I got some room here. This is the position of the FBI. If you draw your gun, you immediately have to hunch because you're doing the 1950s hip draw routine that they had. Jelly Bean. What's his name? Jelly Bean. What was his last name? Can't remember. It doesn't matter. This was the guy.
I just imagine like the Pink Panther song as they're walking along, like da-da, 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 da-da. I mean, when you hit play on that, I thought at first it was parody because the people were running like with their arms all swinging around like they're one of those inflatables outside a car dealership where the arms are swinging. And then
was the pool open when you were at the academy?
No.
What was the lap swimming there? Like, why were they swimming laps?
They had a pool available if you wanted to get extra PT, and there was no swimming component.
It was closed when I was there. It was closed.
It was closed. Yeah,
for repairs.
Significant portions of it were closed. And then they lined up the one woman who's about 4'8", 105 pounds with the Remington 870, and then they clearly cut away because they did not want her sending around on camera.
Yeah, just letting that thing fly. Everything about that is insane. That whole video. That they're doing the cool, like I never got on. Did you ever get on that frame with the Suburban? Did you ever get on one of those frames for the vehicle?
No, they didn't let us use.
Yeah, they didn't use those.
That was not a sedan.
Did you ever get headgear on and go boxing with gloves?
We did do boxing, but we didn't do the bull in the ring because that was deemed to be too violent. Where you stand in the middle and their whole class around
You're supposed to fight 5 people
for
in a row.
5 minutes, keep sending bodies at you.
Yeah.
I did think that the most accurate part of that video, though, was when they were looking at tactical scenarios on a computer screen, because they don't actually do the tactical scenarios. They just sit at a computer screen. That's probably the most accurate reflection you can get.
I thought the most accurate was them eating the sandwiches. They were really excited about those foods.
And laughing it up with your roommate in your room.
Yeah, yucking it up. Why not?
That's accurate.
All of this is to say that we have this myth that people have established. They think the FBI is capable. They think it is one thing. It is, in fact, the other. We've just showed you that 702 FISA is unmitigated capabilities to data mine digital information that touches U.S. wires coming directly from the NSA's search capabilities. That's what the FBI is about. That's the high priority. In the meantime, they're going to tell you, like, what about missing Indian women? Steve just debunked it for you. I'm telling you, my experience is the same. You go out there and try and find where these people, they're not there because they just moved off. They were successful and they left the government reservation, which is to say they got a job and they became Americans like the rest of us. So the saddest thing in the world is that there's this myth of competency. There's this myth of what it actually is doing. You've got people like Donald Trump saying that it's going to go after violent crime in DC. In reality, it's making stupid videos that look like it came from the 80s, even though they probably just made that last year, with garbage, parody style corporate imagery and a bunch of nonsensical music, like unlicensable music. And it's not doing the thing you think. It's people that are serving their own interests. And when people who work inside the Bureau see that, they're like, well, my job is good. The thing that I'm doing is valuable, which is why they're so surprised every single time they bring up, like, the first moment that they have that question, they get thrown out now. By the way, guys like you and me used to be working in the FBI. We would get removed from our job for what we did. And we'd get put in some broom closet somewhere. They'd put us on some squad they didn't care about. They'd send you to an Indian reservation, and then you would just be able to work Indian crimes until you retired. They would ruin your career trajectory. You wouldn't be a supervisor because you weren't a believer. But they didn't take your money and your job and your family and your pension. They didn't destroy that. That didn't used to happen. That's new. That's new since 2020. That's new since the Obama policies and capabilities came in and they started pushing. This is all like Mueller and Comey's sort of legacy within the Bureau. It's a new game. That's why we had guys like Kreider on the other day. He got to finish out his career.
Yes, and he was ATF, but I talked to John Dodson. He's like, look, they just at my time they weren't good enough at targeting the whistleblowers and removing them. It was just the timing that I lucked out on. And he finished his race last year. He retired from the ATF, and Kreider did the same thing. The problem is that these people will sit there and watch this happen and think it's never going to happen to me, because they're bought in to the idea that the FBI is what's projected, or they're hoping to project from that video. That, look, they're doing the good work of the American people, and I'm better off serving on the inside, even if there's problems all around me. I mean, we talked about it yesterday with this Garrett story. Like, that guy came forward now, but unless he recently looked at Garrett's file, where's he been at for the last 20 months?
That's right.
Why didn't he step forward? And I think that they're sitting there in the offices and they're watching and they're afraid. And my moles are telling me from various offices I've talked to, nobody's even doing any work. There's an operational problem now at the FBI. Nobody wants to do anything in these smaller offices, these smaller resident agencies, because they don't want to have the spotlight thrown at them in any way, shape, or form. Just keep your head down and ride your time out. So if even to talk about the good work the FBI does, they're not doing it. They're not. It's not worth the risk. It's better to just punch the clock, make sure you're in your desk at 8:15, and don't leave before 4:45.
Yeah, just shut your mouth and color and try to ride it out to your pension. There are plenty of people who have proven that that's a successful tactic. My former supervisor, when I was on my surveillance team, who likes to criticize me on social media now, it's very funny. He suddenly has all these big, brave balls, but didn't ever, while he was working for the Bureau, did exactly that. I talked to him and he was like, yeah, I'm not getting the shot. I'm just going to hide in my office. I'm going to hope nobody notices me until I can retire. That's called cowardice. We have an agent problem that is a bunch of people who are cowards. The key is when you put your hand up and you do that oath, you're supposed to say, I'm willing to lose this job for the right reason. I want to see that from the president. I want to see that from our director. I want to see it from the attorney general. I want to see it from members of Congress who say there are principles that I will not break. And if that means I lose this job, so be it. You don't get to buy your integrity back. All these people have frittered away integrity, and they have gone with what Rob Green said on our show the other day. They have chosen institution over constitution because they have no constitution of their own. They haven't internalized that and said, freedom is the thing that we're here for. If it costs me my comfort, so be it. We have a country that is addicted to being lazy and weak. And we continue to see that be the case. Like you said, that guy who is the whistleblower, good on him for coming forward, most likely thought things are going to work out in my favor. I'm going to call out what happened to Garrett. Oh, shoot, it happened to me. Now I'm going to have to work through the administrative remedies. Administrative remedies have never worked inside the Bureau. They exist to protect management. That's why we're going to have Kurt Suzdak come on next week and play some of this stuff and talk about it, just how rotten it is, because he's got a really, really interesting seat to the visibility and what's going on in this building.
It would be an interesting, experiment. You'd never be able to do it because it's just not possible, but to just be inside his head or have a blood pressure monitor on him and you and me at the moment when they walked in and they tried to walk us out. I was really calm because I knew I did the right thing. And look, I have no guarantees that I'm going to retire as an FBI agent. I'm going to do the right thing. I bet he was through the roof.
Yep.
Like freaking out. Like, what do you mean? This is completely a mystery, wrapped in an enigma. I have no understanding of how this possibly could have happened. I believed in the system and the system let me down. I recognized and you recognized and Garrett recognized that the system that we were working for was jacked up, and they were the force that we had to stand in the gap against. And if that meant we couldn't retire and have our shadow box like Mr. John Nance, your former supervisor, who guaranteed has a shadow box and I love me some me wall that he types away after 10 hours a day.
He's got a picture of himself
his
with
office at home.
He's got a picture of himself with Eric Holder on his.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that was a problem, and that's why we tried to bring information forward to the people that we hoped would be able to resolve and reform those issues. I mean, maybe our hopes were misplaced in that regard. I mean, I sent over the article to the Weaponization Committee, and they were surprised to get it. So yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not really paying attention. They're. Let me tell you about the moment that they decided to walk me out, because that just brought back a memory to me, and it's poignant for exactly what you said. I don't think have we talked about this before, that moment?
You told me about the badge being in the cork board, but
yeah, no, okay. But I didn't tell you. I had my special agent in charge. His name's Raul Bihanda. I think he's still there. I don't think he's retired yet. He walked into my former boss's office. I was in my former boss's office, a guy who told me, "You've been transferred from my squad and good riddance. I'm glad you're gone." And I was there, not because we were friendlies, but because we had a mutual buddy. We had a friend in common whose wife had just committed suicide. And I wanted him to know that. So I, kind of basically, I did the uncomfortable. I bridged that gap that had already been burned. And I went in there and said, look, this is more important than whatever's going on between you and me. We have a friend. He just lost someone, a woman that you know and that I know. And I wanted you to be aware of it in case you reached out, because we weren't like real close friends, but we were friends enough. And we had that mutual partner. So we go in there and we have that conversation. While I'm having that conversation, he thanks me for letting him know, because like you would. Raul Bihanda and his second in command, who was, I think his name is Ed Brown Jr., if my recollection serves. He was our ASAC. They had driven from Albuquerque without telling us, 3.5 hours, drove all the way down to get rid of me. And I bet you they were getting really hyped up in the van or in the Suburban as they drove down.
Probably listen to that music from the video that you just
Yeah. Do, 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 do. Yeah, getting like ready for FBI training time. They come in, hey, Seraphin, we need you in the conference room. Okay, fine. So I go there. I know what's happening, just like you knew what's happening. I'm like, well, here we go. Thought I was going to ride this one out. Not going to happen. Oh, well, so be it. When we get there, he starts handing paperwork over to me that says I'm going to be suspended, that I'm being removed, that I was unprofessional with a police officer. He tries to read it to me. Not very well, by the way. He's not a very good orator. And I said, I can read. Thank you. I'll read it myself. Shh, take it, read it. I take my time. It's documents that I'm supposed to sign, acknowledging whatever. I'll take my time reading this stuff. So I did. Shh, reading. We do our thing. He asked for the badge. He asked for the gun. We go through that whole thing. On the way out the door, as he's handing that stuff over and he's giving me my final packet, his hands are shaking, like visibly shaking. You pick that kind of stuff up when you're used to interviewing people. You kind of want to know, like, is this person about to have it? They had a massive adrenaline dump. And he reaches out to shake my hand, which is really odd. But like instinctively, I did it anyway. And I gave him a firm grip. He had ice cold hands. Right? That is a sympathetic nervous response, that you dump all the blood away from these kind of things, away from your small, right to the core, right to your major muscle groups that you can fight or flight and run. Icy cold hands, shaking like a leaf. Because that was probably one of the scariest things that he had to do, was walk Kyle Seraphin out the door. What a fucking coward. Sorry. Like I can't even hold that back. It's so amazing to me that these clown show human beings are the ones, and then that's why we get pissed off when people want to defend this agency like it's going to do something. It's made of sycophants and people that worship institution over constitution and do not have any idea what the right thing to do is. And they think they're doing the right thing right up until the alligator eats them. And then they're shocked by it, which is why the people that go to Kurt Suzdak constantly don't understand what's happening. They're all against Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin and Garret O'Boyle right up until it happens to them. And they're like, whoa, what happened to us? What happened?
Can we jump in the lifeboat with you?
Yeah, it happened to everybody. We've had people reach out and say, hey, maybe you might need to do a fundraiser for me. No, screw you. You didn't do the right thing until it came down on your head. We did it up front, knowing what the cost was going to be. That's what suspendable is. That's what being suspendable is, folks. That's what we always talk about. That's why we talk about it. And that's why the story of the ordinary men is such a big deal to us. Because these people are ordinary men. That doesn't make them bad people. It makes them like everybody. They haven't drawn a line in the sand and they're willing to be compromised. That's why I love the people that listen to the show that get what we're about. That's why we encourage people to do it. That's why we wear the merch. It's not about the merch. It's about the idea. It reminds you. Go ahead. Take some final thoughts here and then we'll promote the merch store too.
Look, I I was relieved to hear this story come out from Garrett. I'm going to make sure that I give his thoughts on the American Radicals podcast. We're going to be covering down on that tomorrow on Saturday at noon, rumble.com/amradpod. And I think what we've touched on today is there's just a stark contrast between what our expectations were coming in. I mean, and I remember as clearly as you remember being walked out. I remember being walked out. I remember being walked in. I mean, I remember the day that I got to take my oath and feeling genuinely fortunate and lucky that I got the opportunity to do that. And look, I'm not realistic. Like I'm not a tip of the spear infantryman going into Baghdad that I'm expecting to maybe take on some frag. But I know that that's a possibility. And I said, hey, I'm available for tasking to do that. And unfortunately, too many people just saw it as an opportunity to get a really sweet government paycheck and all the pensions and all the accoutrements attached to it. And as long as you are a system idealist for that system, and none of us were about that system, we're about being available for a larger system, the only system that matters.
That's it. That's what it's about. Folks, you want to support our buddy Garrett, who has been not just vindicated again and again and again, but continues to be vindicated. And by the way, there's more coming, folks. We're not done with this story yet. And it's all going to make sense pretty soon, I think. Hopefully we can tell the story on a bigger platform than this one. You guys can support the merch store. It's the-suspendables.com, the-suspendables.com. What shirt am I wearing today? I'm wearing the TKSS shirt. That's the Kyle Seraphin Show shirt. If you guys want to support that, it's got our Suspendables badge on it. That is where the loyalty for this team lies. It lies in doing the right thing for the right reason. Promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. Promo code Kyle saves you 10%. None of the monies from that merch store go to the show. They all go to our buddy. That's what we do. The-suspendables.com. Promo code Kyle. You guys can use it to save a little bit of money and also let people know as you walk out in the world that you want to be suspendable. Steve, we had more stuff. I'm not going to cover it all. I have a drag queen video. I'll do it on Monday. It's all good. Do you want a palate cleanser for the weekend?
Send it. I need it.
You got little kids. I got little kids. We've been going through a guy named Tyler Champagne's toddler motivational podcast. So folks, if you are behind and this is the first show you've caught in a while, you got to go back to the beginning of the week. We did it on Monday. We did it on Tuesday. We did it on Thursday. It's Jocko Willink style, black and white, motivational podcast. This is Toddler Motivational Podcast number 4 with Tyler Champagne. You can find him on Instagram. Here we go.
Drop your nap, raise your parents' blood pressure, learn 200 words, use 0 of them. Do not wash your hands ever, unless it's in a dirty puddle or a disease-filled bird bath. Next time you're supposed to be napping, calculate your chaos potential instead. Chaos potential is the amount of sleep you get multiplied by the chaotic energy you have in your friend circle. You associate yourself with respectful, well-behaved, non-violent toddlers, you have a low chaos potential. Associate yourself with the girl who sings Jingle Bells well into the summer. Associate yourself with the boy who tries to put an entire doorknob in his mouth. That friend circle, those associates, high chaos potential. If you are going to sleep, do it face down. Never let your parents get comfortable. People give up when they're at their lowest moment. Make sure your parents get to theirs. Get obsessed with bubbles. While you're watching the bubbles float away, your mom is watching her sanity float away. If a flower doesn't bloom, do you blame the flower or the environment? Screw the flower, stomp on it, put it in your mouth, throw it at your baby sister.
That is how you do it. I'm pretty sure my son has been listening to these podcasts without telling me, and he is doing all those things.
I see that there's a gap here. We need to fill. We need to have a David Goggins version of the toddler podcast. We got to find someone to do that for us. Because
just stare at their shoes and not put them on, but they're on the wrong feet.
Scream at them about how they're failures at life.
It's all good. All right, folks, we hope you have a good weekend. Check out tomorrow, the American Radicals. What you guys are covering down on all the FBI failures. You guys have done a little retrospective. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I went all the way back to April of this year and got some FBI failures. I think 12 headlines.
It took you 40 days to go back and find like an entire show's worth of failures.
All within Garrett's fasting period. That's really what I had.
Fantastic. All right, guys, follow Steve Friend. You can follow him at Real Steve Friend on X. You can follow him at Real_Steve Friend on True Social and the American Radicals podcast. If you're not following that, it's AmradPod, rumble.com/AmradPod. I salute you, friend. I will see you. I'll see you next week for this. We'll talk over the weekend, I'm sure.
All right. Be blessed.
Okay, Steve Friend signing off. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate all of you. I hope you guys enjoyed the palate cleanser. Let me put a long 5-star review on. I hope you guys do not mind because this one is a little bit intense, but we're going to get into it. Here it goes. This is from NC2 Cali, coming from earlier last month. No time for the comforting lies, 5 stars. I have been a steadfast viewer of the Kyle Seraphin Show from the beginning. There's truly nothing like it. Kyle brings a unique perspective from his life experiences, which you won't find anywhere else. I've been a dedicated consumer of Dan Bongino's podcast since 2017, and it was through Dan's podcast that I first discovered Kyle Seraphin. I catch it live on Rumble more often than not, but I do miss the live and can only listen caught up here on Apple Podcasts. Every episode, Kyle is perfecting his craft in making an excellent show, and it just keeps getting better. This is a really long, self-serving one, folks. I'm just going to keep going with it because I love it. Kyle is a former FBI special agent who was unjustly fired after coming forward as a whistleblower. He's a true patriot who fearlessly exposes the hidden truths. We try, even if it doesn't make you happy, y'all. He brings eye-opening insight into the tactics of the jackbooted thugs harassing you that doesn't toe the line across America, and he is his ex-girlfriend's loudest critic. As an ardent 2A advocate and activist, I appreciate his unwavering defense of the constitutional right to keep and bear arms. It's truly inspirational stance against Marxist jackwagons trying to trample on the right to self-defense. As an added bonus, the references to 90s action movies brings joy to my heart. Point Break is one of the best movies of all time. If you know, you know. Thank you, Kyle, and the other Suspendables. There it is, Steve and Garrett, for bringing the truth to the sunlight. It's where the lies are sanitized. The liberals in America hate this country and are committed to the destruction of everything we stand for. We need brave patriots like the Suspendables to fight back against tyranny. God bless him for always bringing the fight and the fire, saturated in truth. Be prepared to be red pill. That is a hell of a review. Folks, if you want to leave a hell of a review like that, you can guarantee you will find yourself on the Kyle Seraphin Show being read at one of the end. Please leave them. They don't have to be that long, but we do really appreciate your thoughts. That is a pretty good encompassing of what we're all about here, and it covers down exactly on how to avoid the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again. Be suspendable. Be aware that you may be asked in your life, whatever that looks like, to do the right thing, and there will be a cost associated with it. Be prepared to bear that cost, and do so gladly, knowing that you join good company. This is not self-serving. This is serving your kids. This is serving your country, and this is serving the future, which is what Western values are about. This is doing the right thing for the right reason, in the right way, at the moment that you least expect to be asked to do it. I thought I was out of the fire when that guy came through the door and told me to get into the conference room and leave. So be it. Your moment will come when you are not expecting it, but you better be prepared for it. And it is coming for all of us. This is a wild year. We're asking our politicians to be better. We can only do that if we know what they're doing, that they're doing wrong, that we have good information. We're trying to disseminate it. Do me a favor. Share episodes like this that break down the reality of the truth on the ground so that people can go out and be armed in their disagreements with their friends. Disagreements, not fights or arguments. Just disagree with them politely and give them information and refer them back here. Anyway, that's your ammo. That is your charge for the weekend. I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend. Disconnect if you can. Don't spend your time obsessing about the news. It will always be there. We'll get back to it on Monday morning. Until that point, God bless all of you. I mean that. I hope God blesses all of them. I hope they bless that God blesses our family and continues to. And we will see you again after the weekend in the morning on Monday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.